We're going live. We're having reports of new attacks launched by Iran against Israel as part of its True Promise free operations taking place since Friday following the attacks of the Israeli regime against Iranian civilian and military infrastructures. This is the third day of continued exchange of fire between Iran and Israel, as we were saying, as part of the Operation True Promise Free, which is a legitimate defense of the Iranian government in the face of the aggressions perpetrated by Israel since the early hours of Friday, from the night between Thursday to Friday, that targeted different objectives and also killing high military chiefs and senior nuclear scientists in that first wave of attacks. Since then, Israel has continued launching its missile strikes not only against military structures and objectives in different parts of Iran, but also against civilian targets. As per the reports, there are over 80 people killed right now in Iran throughout these days of Israeli strikes, and among them 20 children have been reported killed, 20 Iranian children. In response to this, the Iranian air forces have carried out retaliatory strikes against Tel Aviv, also impacting heavy damage to key infrastructure of the Zionist regime of Israel. What is happening right now is a new wave of attacks from Iran in retaliation to the earlier strikes of today from the Israeli military against Iran. Different targets in Tel Aviv. This is right now what is happening, a new wave of Iranian strikes against the Israeli capital. Also today, earlier, as we were saying, there were loud explosions that were heard near the Mehrabad airport in western Tehran. Earlier during the day, Israeli forces began attacking different areas of Tehran, and local media confirmed the activation of the air defense throughout the Iranian capital. And the blasts were reportedly the engaging of the air defenses targeting unidentified aerial objects that were engaging in attacks on the Iranian capital. Also, in the context of what has been happening in today is that Iran published, as they have been saying previously, we must remember that Iran had said that it was in possession of important classified documents from Israel, and Iran began publishing today the first documents of that they were saying they had. And these documents show that the International Atomic Energy Agency chief, Rafael Grossi, was coordinating with Israel and was carrying out Israel's direct orders. So these are classified documents that Iran just published, which show the complicity of this international agency chief with Israel in all its actions that have been carried out, and shows the double standard that is being witnessed as this exchange of fire is happening. Also today, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian had a telephone conversation with his Iraqi counterpart Abdul Latif Rashid, telling him that if Israeli aggressions against Iran continues, which is what is happening, Iran's response will be more severe and decisive, which is also what we're seeing, because we also heard statements from the foreign minister earlier today of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, saying that Iran did not begin this war, but will certainly be able to stand against it and will be able to provide its response, and also said that Iran doesn't wish for the situation to escalate, that if Israel stops its attacks, they would stop theirs as well, and they don't want the war to escalate to neighboring countries unless there is force upon them. Iran will continue to exercise its legitimate right to defense, which is what's being stated by the Iranian authorities. This has also been condemned by different sectors, by different authorities worldwide have condemned what is happening. From Arab peoples in this sense, several Arab countries celebrated Iran's retaliatory attacks against Israeli targets, and the people celebrated the successful punitive operation against the Israeli occupation regime, which Iranians, including Iranians, Palestinians, Lebanese, and Turks. It should be noted that this operation began, as we were saying, after Iranian leader Ayatollah Said Khamenei broadcast a televised message, and the attacks were carried out in response to the Israeli regime's aggression against Iran, which left dozens of martyrs, including high-ranking military commanders and nuclear scientists. In conversations with the UK Foreign Minister, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described as unfounded the calls for Tehran to exercise restraint. It's something that happened earlier on Saturday, because in the face of the Israeli regime's aggression, we also see there the evidence of the double standards. How is Israel the one that first launches its strikes against Iranian civilian and military targets, and then the United Kingdom is calling on Iran to show restraint? While emphasizing that Iran's response to this aggression, said the foreign minister of Iran, based on the United Nations Charter, will be forceful and definitive. In response to a wave of Israeli airstrikes during the early hours, the Islamic Republic of Iran launched a large-scale military operation called, has been named Operation True Promise Free, attacking several strategic points of the Zionist entity. We've also had reactions coming from other countries, like from Venezuela. The Venezuelan government declared that it is an act of war that adds to the long history of crimes committed by the Netanyahu regime, whose machinery of destruction operates outside the law. And Venezuela demands the immediate cessation of all hostilities by Israel, which has turned its foreign policy into a permanent threat to peace in Western Asia. From the Russian part, Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs also expressed its rejection and denounced the aggressions of the Israeli regime against the people of Iran carried out in the early morning of June 13th. In a statement, it said, "We express extreme concern about the dangerous escalation of tension in the Middle East, and we strongly condemn the military action undertaken in the early hours of June 13th by the State of Israel in violation of the Charter of the United Nations and the norm of international law." So this is what is right now happening, a new exchange of this Sunday of fire. Israel has been targeting different objectives, like the vicinities of an airport in the capital of Iran, and now Iran is launching its also retaliatory strikes against the Israeli capital. Right now we are seeing the live images of the skyline as the attack has been announced by different authorities. And all this comes, as we have been informed, since the Israeli regime launched its first airstrikes on Iran on early Friday, to which Tehran responded with a barrage of drones and missiles, and Israel said it aimed to prevent the Islamic Republic from acquiring nuclear weapons, which is the justification for everything that they're right now doing. Their alleged justification, but without proving any kind of evidence, because as we have been reporting, Tehran has over again and again said and provided evidence that their nuclear project is for peaceful means, for energy. So Tehran condemns this attack as a blatant aggression and vowed a crushing response, which is also what we have been witnessing. And all this came in the context of before the sixth round, which was supposed of nuclear negotiations, nuclear talks, indirect talks that were being held between the U.S. and Iran that were due to take place this Sunday in Oman. They were due to be happening, and they had been confirmed by both parties to happen this Sunday, today, in Oman, but of course following the actions, which pretty much the Israeli action is a clear sabotage. They didn't want this to be resolved peacefully, and through negotiation is a clear sabotage to peace. Following this, the Israeli action, of course, the talks were suspended until indefinitely for the time being. So around early Friday morning, just as a recap, early Friday morning, around 200 Israeli fighter jets struck targets across Iran, including a uranium enrichment facility in Natanz, which strikes were also reported at nuclear sites in Fordo and Isfahan, as well as military airfields near the cities of Hamadan and Tabriz. These strikes against nuclear targets will show a complete disregard for the safety not only of Iran but of the region and the stability of the region, because attacking a nuclear facility might have dire consequences for the entire region, not only for Iran, if contamination, if pollution happens due to radioactivity, due to damage to key infrastructure of these nuclear sites. Almost 80 people, as we reported, were killed and over 320 injured in the attacks. This is what the report that was given by the Iranian ambassador to the UN, and he also confirmed the death of military leaders, including Major General Hossein Salami, the commander of the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And also between these 80 people that were killed is the one we were saying that were also 20 children, which completely showed also Israel's disregard for life. But this is something that we have grown accustomed to, as we have seen the genocide that has been committed for over 2 years now against the Palestinian people in Gaza, with over 55,000 people, civilians, killed so far in those 2 years of genocide in Gaza. Also, another victim of a high-ranking military official of that attack was Major General Mohammad Bagheri, the chief staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, and Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajisadeh, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Airspace Division. Several veterans also, as we reported, of nuclear scientists were also killed. We must also add that all these losses in the military structure have already been new people have taken those positions and are carried out their duty in the sovereign defense of Iranian sovereignty and their territorial integrity. We're also getting news right now that Israel has extended the nationwide state of emergency that it had implemented at the beginning of these actions until June 30th. So until June 30th, Israel extends the nationwide state of emergency until June 30th. You must remember, as soon as Israel launched its first airstrikes, it established this state of emergency because obviously they knew that Iran would not stay silent. Iran would respond in its legitimate right to defend, to its defense. They will respond to the latest Israeli aggression. Now, these strikes, as we have been describing, have been defended by Israel. Of course, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the strikes dubbed in the operation dubbed Rising Lion was aimed for the survivor of Israel. Something that evidence has not been able to be proven, because the reason for the strike, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, is to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, something that Benjamin Netanyahu in particular and the Zionist entity as a whole have been saying for years now, that Iran was close to a nuclear weapon. But the tale becomes hard to believe, since the early 2000s they were saying that Iran was 2 years close to a nuclear weapon, then 3 years, then 4 years, and it's been over 25, and still, because as the Iranians have said, their interest is not offensive, it's peaceful, there's no evidence of it. But even so, Netanyahu saying that they do this action under the disguise of this happening, that they want to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. But the interesting thing is that if we go to the annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community, this is an assessment, a document elaborated by the United States Intelligence Committee from March 2025. So this year's threat assessment that is developed by the U.S. intelligence community. On page 26, you can look this up. On page 26, it says clearly, we continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and that Khamenei, the supreme leader, has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. This is, I'm quoting what is written on page 26 of this annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community. So we are seeing there the double standard and how hollow their claims is unfounded, because you have the intelligence community saying on the one hand that they know that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and it has not been authorized by the maximum authorities, because the nuclear weapons program has been suspended and has not been restored since 2003, and yet they carry out all this attack under these false pretenses that they want to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Of course, in response to these Israeli attacks, the Iranian army They did not stay with their hands crossed. They took action to defend their sovereignty and their legitimate right to defend their nation. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, condemned the strikes, the Israeli strikes, as unjustified and accused Israel of killing civilians. And the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, said the actions amount to a declaration of war. The Iranian army launched more than 100 drones in retaliation after these 4 strikes on its territory. It then launched ballistic missiles, some of which broke through the Israeli defenses and landed in Tel Aviv, killing over 3 people and over 60 injured on those first strikes, according to the Israeli media. But this is also something that is important to note. The missiles, the Iranian missiles, were able to break Israel's defense. If we recall, this defense system of Israel is named the Iron Dome, provided, of course, by the U.S. authority, by the U.S. government. It's a U.S. anti-air defense system, and was supposedly to have over 90% effectiveness to prevent missiles from hitting their targets, something that the Iranian ballistic missiles have shown that the Iron Dome is weaker than it was previously advertised, as Iranian missiles have broken through this Iron Dome and have hit their targets, causing severe damage to different military infrastructures across Israel, especially in the north as well, where there's a lot of military presence and different airfields across Israel, and also have hit their targets in some areas of the occupied territories. In all these contexts, yesterday, on Saturday, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, held a telephone conversation to discuss what was happening in the Middle East. And in this conversation that lasted for over 50 minutes, President Vladimir Putin denounced and condemned what was happening, the escalation of Israel, and called for its immediate stop because of the repercussions it can have for the region, stability, and for the world. But Trump, on the other side, it hailed the operation of Israel and explained that it was as a necessary thing because the Iranians did not want to accept the deal. So this is another show of a bully empire. So you either sign what I want you to sign, or missiles will rain on you. So that's no way to carry out negotiations, to carry out diplomatic discussions. That's from the U.S. perspective. But the Russian perspective has also been shared by different nations in the region and the world, like the one from Turkey. President Erdogan also came out and condemned the Israeli strikes and called for de-escalation. The authorities of Qatar, of the United Arab Emirates, different regions have called for the end of the Israeli impunity in the face of all the crimes that they commit. Well, this is what has been happening for a while. This is what has been happening for a while now. In that context, that we have been going up what is happening, and we recall right now that Iran is carrying retaliatory attacks right at this moment against the Israeli capital, against Tel Aviv, which is the live images we're seeing on our screen, the skyline of the Israeli capital, as the retaliatory attacks are expected to arrive anytime. Now, nuclear talks, as we were saying previously, are in jeopardy because, if we recall, today was supposed to happen, the 6th round of indirect talks between the U.S. and Iran were supposed to happen today, but of course, following all these developments, Iran suspended, obviously, because if we see the chronological order, on Wednesday, Thursday, Iran and on the U.S. side, they were all confirming that the talks were going to be held on Sunday. But by the time, while people were moving forward on the peaceful side of negotiation, Israel had already their own plans because the planes were already close to Iran to carry out the attacks that happened earlier on Thursday and Friday. on Thursday, June 13th and Friday, June 14th. So, and these attacks, of course, as has been said by Trump himself, they were aware of these attacks that were going to happen. So it did not happen out of the blue. So for the time being, Iran suspended its participation in the negotiations with the U.S., which as we were saying, the sixth round was due to take place on Sunday. And Tehran, of course, continues to reject Trump's demands as unacceptable, insisting it would continue nuclear research for its peaceful civilian purposes. So the air defenses of the Islamic Republic of Iran have launched a new wave of missiles against Israel after intercepting Zionist targets in Isfahan in the early hours of Saturday, where the country's largest nuclear research center is located. And explosions have been heard in different areas of Tehran today as their air defenses has been activated. Iran has also denounced the complicity, as we were saying, of the United States in the new Israeli aggression against Iranian territory before the United Nations Security Council during an extraordinary session convened by Tehran. The Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps carried out Operation True Promise Free against at least 150 military targets in Israel. 5 waves of attacks have been reported so far. This is all a sum up of the information from Saturday. The Iranian Guard assured that it is giving a destructive and precise response against dozens of targets of the Zionist regime, including the Ministry of Defense, military centers, and air bases, in different waves of attacks, with Israeli health authorities reporting several casualties as well as several injuries. And all this comes after the first strike, the attacks launched by Israel started on Thursday, June 13th, on Friday. So I was saying Iran has denounced the U.S. complicity in what was happening. Now we have getting information that the power plant and Netanyahu family home have also been targeted in these recent attacks. And the Israeli media, the ones giving this announcement, Israeli media announced that the Al-Qudayra power plant and the Netanyahu family home in the town of Kaysariya near occupied Jerusalem were also targeted in this latest wave of Iran's retaliatory strikes against Israel. So right now, the images that we are seeing live on our screen is from occupied Jerusalem. As we were saying, that alarms are sounding, the alarms are active. As we were saying, Iranian strikes are targeting right now this region of the occupied territories, and the plant, they are announcing, Israeli media are announcing that Al-Qudayra power plant and the Netanyahu family home in the town of Kaysariya near occupied Jerusalem are currently being targeted. So those are the images we have right now live on our screen of the occupied Jerusalem territory also being targeted by the Iranian retaliatory strikes following earlier Israeli strikes against different targets, including civilian targets in Iran. If we recall yesterday, Israel also struck one of the major gas plants in the Persian Gulf that is co-owned between Iran and Doha and Qatar, triggering a large fire, and also has targeted different oil depots in different areas in port cities. But this is the latest hours coming right now that according to Israeli medias, Iranian Iranian strike had as an objective the power plant, the Al Qudaira power plant, and the Netanyahu family home in the town of Kayseriya, near occupied Jerusalem, which is what we are seeing right now, which is the skyline from Tel Aviv. Now we have the skyline of occupied Jerusalem, of that territory. And I don't know if you can hear on the background the sounds of the noise of everything that is happening, as alarms are sounding as well for people to flee to their closest shelters and take refuge. So all this is coming as the air defenses of the Islamic Republic of Iran continue to launch a new wave of missiles against Israel after these Israeli strikes earlier on Sunday, which targeted different areas in the Iranian capital, including the vicinities of a civilian airport. In Karaj, west of the capital, detonations were also heard, and attack on a communications tower were also reported. These incidents occurred earlier as well in the early hours as part of the Zionist escalations that are targeting Iranian strategic infrastructure. Local press have confirmed that an Iranian ballistic missile hit the Kiryat building, which the Kiryat building is like the is the equivalent of the U.S. Pentagon in Tel Aviv. So it's like the main building for the military, for the army, for the Israeli army. So this has the same function. All this happened during the first wave of attacks by Iran. So this is also part of the new wave of missiles that are being launched from Iran towards Israel. Iran has activated as well its defense systems, including the Bavar 373, which is capable of intercepting threats at 300 kilometers. This is according to Iranian defense sources. The Revolutionary Guard also described the attacks as Zionist aggressions, and they have promised and continue to exercise their firm response against Jerusalem, where air raid sirens, as we have been reporting, are right now sounding, warning of the possible Iranian responses, and alarms are reported also in the occupied Golan Heights. This is Syria, the Golan Heights, the occupied Golan Heights territory. Iran also has launched more than, so far that we have the number, have launched over 200 missiles in response to the escalation, which are hitting key areas of Tel Aviv and causing heavy damage, structural damage. And this continued exchange of attacks comes after Israeli bombings of nuclear facilities, as we were reporting, in Isfahan and Fordo, which were also confirmed by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which reported damage to both. And the international community, including the UN, are expressing their concern about the escalation, while the U.S. denies its direct involvement in the attacks. And I say this, its direct involvement, because Trump himself have said previously on between Friday and Saturday, he said that he was aware of the attacks happening so in a way, and also in a way indirectly, at the end of the day, the U.S. is complicit as well, because they have been providing logistical and military support for years and providing all the weapons and technology that makes Israel capable of carrying out this escalation, putting at risk the regional stability, and not only the regional but also the world stability, as we have begun to see gas prices soar across Europe in different areas. This is something that is being denounced, as we were saying, by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, by Turkey, by United Arab Emirates, different different countries of the region have come out to condemn, by Jordan, by Iraq, or different countries of the region come out to condemn the attacks being carried out again from Israel against Iran, and Iran, of course, in its legitimate right, as they have stated, to defense, as is established in the UN Charter and international law. They are exercising their legitimate right to a defense after the strikes of the Israeli Zionist armies. And as we were saying, referring to Iraq, the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, held a telephone conversation with his counterpart from Iraq, Abdul Latif Rashid. Now, during this conversation, the Iranian president said, if Israeli aggression against Iran continues, Iran's response will be more severe and decisive. He also said that violating Iraqi airspace to attack Iran is a clear evidence of the criminality of the Israeli entity and its violation of international norms, calling Iraq to be more careful with its border and airspace, saying also that Iran did not start the war but will continue to respond firmly. So as long as the aggression continues, so will Iranians' response will be more painful and harsh. That's what the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, told his Iraqi counterpart, Abdul Latif Rashid, on a telephone conversation that they held earlier in the day, making it clear that Iran did not start this war, but their response will be severe and strong, and they will continue to carry out their response as long as Israel continues its attacks. Something that was also said earlier this Sunday by the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who said this, that they are going to continue the response as long as Israel continue its attacks. And so we have now some images of the attacks that we were reporting earlier, of the attacks on the capital of Israel, on Tel Aviv. The attacks that we reported earlier, we're seeing the images as the missiles, the Iranian missiles, are arriving to their designated targets in the Israeli capital. These are images that are right now on social media, showing the different attacks against the capital. Now let's go over some of what different leaders across the world have been saying since all this escalation began. As we were saying, we were just referring to the talk between the Iranian president and his Iraqi counterpart. So Iraq, on their part, condemns Israel's attacks. The Iraqi military condemns Israeli violations of its airspace as it continues to attack Iran. This was reported on a quote by one of their local news that the spokesperson for the head of the country's army said that the Iraqi government reiterated its complete rejection of the violation of Iraqi airspace and its use in military attacks committed by Israel against Iran or against any other of their neighboring regional countries. The spokesperson of the Iraqi military also said that the Iraqi government is following up with international parties on all these illegal actions, which it considers blatant violation of Iraqi sovereignty and the principles of international law, with a negative impact on stability and peace in the region. There is also videos taken times ago, that show the recent Iranian strikes that we were reporting against Tel Aviv, following their retaliatory strikes following Zionist aggressions against the capital of Iran earlier on Sunday, targeting different structures, including an airport in the western area of the Iranian capital. So let's now go back to the skyline of occupied Jerusalem as alarms continue to blare. They continue out loud, warning of impending strikes coming on the way to the occupied territory of Jerusalem. We recap that objectives that were targeted in this area were the Al Qudaira power plant and the Netanyahu family home in the town of Caesarea. All this is near the occupied Jerusalem territory, which is the skyline that we're seeing now as the alarms continue to sound for people to know that the attacks are imminent. So as we were saying just a moment ago, the spokesperson for the Iraqi military also said that they condemn and they are following up all these illegal actions, because if we look at the map, of course, in order for those missiles to travel from Israel to Iran, they have to go over, of course, the airspace of Iraq and Jordan. Of both these countries, they have to travel over that airspace. The other options would be Turkey a bit to the south, but the shorter path will be over these two nations. That's why they are both, Jordan as well, are denouncing the illegal use of their airspace and the violation of international law to commit these aggressions of Israel against Iran, and of course aggressions to which Iran was forced to respond after the murder of key military officials and scientists and nuclear scientists. Now we are also seeing images from the occupied Palestinian territories in Ramallah, West Bank, where sirens are also blaring, are also sounding out loud, warning settlers that also different areas here are being targeted as part of the retaliatory strikes of Iran against Israel, following the Zionist attacks that have been happening since Thursday against the Persian nation. If we go over in that casualty of those force, we recap that casualty of that force strike from Israel against Iran, where almost 80 people were killed and 320 injured. Of these 80 people killed, 20 were children. And also Israel lost top military leaders like Major General Hossein Salami, the commander of the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Major General Mohammad Bagheri, the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, and Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Airspace Division, as well as several veteran nuclear scientists, were also targeted and killed during that first strike on Thursday and Friday, between Thursday and Friday. So we continue to see images of occupied Jerusalem as alarms are sounding. So we have reports of alarms sounding in Ramallah, occupied West Bank, and also in occupied Jerusalem, as well as different areas of Israel. Now this new wave is being carried out with ballistic missiles and have been launched to Israel, as more explosion has been reported in the Iranian capital, which is the exchange that has been happening this Sunday. So Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has urged regional countries to adopt a clear, decisive, and effective stance against the aggression by Israel. In remarks that he made recently At a cabinet meeting, he said Iran's military has so far responded strongly and appropriately to the Israeli attacks on Iran, saying Israel pursues every crime in the region every crime in the region without any restriction and with the green light of the United States. And we just have reports. We just have report of that U.S. air defenses and United Kingdom, UK, British air defenses have helped Israelis air defenses to intercept the latest missiles launched by Iran against Israel. It's a last information we're getting from occupied territories in Palestine. They are reporting that British, U.S. air defenses are working together with the Israeli ones to intercept the latest missiles launched by Iran against Israel. Now let's listen, as we continue to continue this breaking news, let's listen to some statements that were given by the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, earlier, where he firstly said that Iran was willing to sign an agreement to prevent it from having nuclear weapons as long as it does not infringe on his country's legitimate rights. Let's listen.
We are ready for any agreement whose aim is to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, because that is our own doctrine. It is our own belief that nuclear weapons are forbidden and prohibited. But if the purpose of an agreement is to deprive Iran of its nuclear rights, then naturally, we are not prepared to accept such an agreement. We count up with broad evidence of how U.S. forces aided the Zionist regime. But beyond our evidence, the statements of President Trump are even more revealing. On his tweets yesterday, and on his interviews, where he openly expressed his support, he clearly asserted that such an operation would not have been possible without U.S. equipment, and that further steps would be taken. Therefore, from our perspective, the United States is complicit in these attacks and must hold responsibility.
So we have now an updated information on the toll of the Iranian strikes on defensive strikes on Iran, as the Israeli authorities have reported so far, according to Israeli information. They have reported at least 13 people killed and 380 hurt in Iran's attacks on Israel. They are reporting 9 that are in serious conditions, and that over 200 missiles and drones were fired into Israel since the start of the fighting, with 22 places hit, 22 regions affected by the strikes. Now, the damage from Iranian attacks is extensive and unprecedented, since this is the first time that Israel has confronted a state that can go toe-to-toe with them. So the Bat Jam area, the hardest hit area, has seen several dozen buildings damaged, according to authorities, say that 9 or 10 are beyond repair. That's why also the number of casualties is not final, and to the north in Haifa, oil and gas pipelines have also been damaged, and in Tambra, there are also reports of damage to different infrastructures. So, as we were reporting, Iran has launched a barrage of missiles and dropped deep into the Israeli-occupied territories overnight, also striking multiple targets across Tel Aviv, Bat Yam, and Rishon LeZion. The most significant among these was a direct hit on the Weizmann Institute of Science, one of Israel's most strategic research centers and cornerstones of its military-industrial complex. In Bat Yam also, they have confirmed the damage to 61 buildings, with 6 said to be demolished due to structural collapse. And all this is as the actions from Iran continues following the strikes of Israel against Iran, and Iran in its legitimate defense in Operation True Promise 3 are also exercising their right to defense and are striking key areas of the Israeli regime, key areas for its economy and for its military-industrial complex. We are getting now recent reports of a post made by U.S. President Trump saying that there are many calls and meetings taking place. The U.S. President said that Iran and Israel will have been soon. This is according to the U.S. President Donald Trump, who just posted these statements on his Truth social media app. He said that Iran and Israel will make a deal and it will happen soon, adding that they will have peace between Israel and Iran, as there are many calls and meetings that are taking place as he's writing these posts. This is just something that U.S. President Donald Trump just posted, as we were saying, on his Truth social app, saying that many talks and conversations and meetings are taking place and that peace should be reached soon, according to U.S. President Donald Trump. So this is the latest information coming from this latest exchange between Iran and Israel. We're going to continue, of course, providing all the details and following everything that is happening right now in the Middle East. As we were saying, Israel continues to escalate tensions, continue to attack different structures, both civilians and military, in Iran. Today there were different explosions registered in the Iranian capital. One of its airports in the western region of Tehran, the capital, was also one of the targets that were attacked by the Israeli forces. In return, Iran has also launched several ballistic missiles and drones against Israel as part of its retaliatory attacks in the exercise of its legitimate defense to its national sovereignty and to the integrity of the nation. And this is right now the news that are happening. We have alarms sounding in Tel Aviv. We have alarms in occupied Jerusalem, alarms in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, as different targets have been targeted by Iran against Israel, trying to destroy and to damage and to hinder the industrial military complex of the Zionist army, as well as the key facilities and structure in the Israeli country. And that's the information we have so far, and we're going to continue updating, so stay tuned with teleSUR English to have all the latest updates and details of everything that is happening. And we just saw on Truth Social, U.S. President Donald Trump was saying that meetings are on the way and that peace was to be happening soon. We can take that with a grain of salt, but stay tuned with teleSUR English as we'll have more updates in upcoming news briefs.